Welcome to another episode of the Ivan Herrera Show. We are now recapping Week 6. Can you believe it? Week 6 is already in the books, which means with Week 7 already on the horizon, we have to go over not only a few performances that we thought that were impressive, but we need to give you the breakdown of what players you need to cut, which ones you have to pick up and prioritize with your upcoming waivers. So let's get into it. If you are here for the first time, my name is Ivan Herrera. I am so excited that you're here because I have a great video for you. But let's go ahead and go over some of the highlights that I wanted to go over for Week 6. The first one beginning with Sean Tucker out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This guy was the RB1 in Week 6, and he put up a surreal performance, had 14 carries, 136 yards, had a touchdown, also had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 56 yards and a touchdown. Truly putting great usage considering that Rachaad White was out with an injury, which meant he of course got all the extra targets and he absolutely maximized over Bucky Irving. But this guy is going to be going up against a really tough Ravens defense. They actually allow the 4th fewest points to opposing running backs. Even though we are excited about the performance, still tread carefully when it comes to assessing Sean Tucker for waivers. Now, another one I wanted to go over is going to be Joshua Downs. Now, this was impressive because we saw another missed opportunity for Anthony Richardson to play. He was out with the injury once again in Week 6, but Joshua Downs continues to see success. He had 7 receptions on 9 targets for 66 yards and a touchdown, and Downs continues to show his athletic ability and his ability to also get separation. He is now first among all wide receivers in route win rate. He is also second in route win rate versus man coverage. So Downs continues to show his success with getting separation, and of course Flacco under center continues to be a strong weapon for the Indianapolis Colts despite them missing their star quarterback Anthony Richardson. Now I wanted to go over the Texans because I thought it was really encouraging that, of course, with them losing Nico Collins for the IR, we got to see Tank Dell finally put a game together that was fantasy worthy for us. He had 7 receptions on 9 targets for 57 yards and a touchdown. And we also saw Stephon Diggs continue his success, getting 6 for 7 receptions as well for 77 yards and a touchdown, giving you a strong fantasy performance in week number 6. We just cut down with watching Monday Night Football, and I think it's worth mentioning that Breece Hall looked absolutely phenomenal. And it was good to see Breece Hall have a phenomenal game on Monday Night Football. He had 18 carries for 113 yards, also was able to combine that with 5 receptions on 6 targets for 56 yards, giving you a 20 plus fantasy performance in PPR formats. And of course, we can't not also mention Ray Davis. Ray Davis is someone that filled in for James Cook last minute. I know I had to make a quick pivot to pick him up off my waivers, and he had 20 carries for 97 yards, also caught 3 of his targets for 55 yards as well. Really giving you a great performance, especially for those of you that maybe had James Cook and had to make a pivot to pick up Ray Davis off your waivers. Before we go over the key players that I want you to focus on for your waivers for Week 7, let's go over some players you should be getting rid of and cutting to make space for these players that we're going to be targeting in Week 7. The first one is going to be Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford, for me, unfortunately, is someone that had a pretty good start to his season, but in Week 6, he left the game early versus Philadelphia with a hamstring injury, and he's now considered as week to week. And unfortunately, with the arrival of Nick Chubb coming back into this offense, I don't really want much of this Cleveland offense to begin with. So, for example, a few weeks back, I traded Amari Cooper after his big performance and was able to sell him high for a good return. I mean, unfortunately, we can't do the same thing with Jerome Ford because he's now coming off an injury, but at this point, he is, for me, someone worth cutting considering that we have some pretty good options for you to replace him with in waivers. Now, another one I feel on the fence with, but still I think is worth dropping, is going to be Zach Moss. And this is probably more of a tougher decision, especially if you're really thin at running back, because we're just seeing Chase Brown being much more efficient within this offense. Listen, he is right now carrying the ball at 5.6 yards per carry compared to Moss's 3.6. And after Moss had that injury as well as the fumble, we didn't see much of him in this game. We also got to see that Chase Brown, not only is he being more efficient than Zach Moss, but he also has more touchdowns on less touches, showing you that when he's given the opportunity, he's obviously been the more efficient running back for the Cincinnati Bengals offense. Another one I want to go over is going to be Dontavian Wicks. You can go ahead and say goodbye to him because he left the game early versus Arizona with a shoulder injury, and he's also been considered as week to week. But with the emergence of Christian Watson back into the lineup, plus you got to see the great performance from Romeo Doubs to go along with Jalen Reed still, of course, in the mix, I would much rather depart on Wicks for some other better options that we have on the waivers. Unfortunately for Dontavian Wicks, he was not able to maximize after being a hot commodity a couple weeks back off waivers himself, and yeah, you can easily move on from him going forward as well. Now another one, this is for me one that was painful to watch, especially when you're watching back the tape, and that was Calvin Ridley. He had such an interesting stat line. He had 0 receptions, so he didn't give you much, right? He gave you 0. Well, he had 8 targets, which almost makes no sense. But when you look back at the tape, these targets were trash targets from Will Levis. I mean, maybe 4 of them were somewhat catchable. The rest were just, good Lord, I mean, what was he throwing at? But unfortunately for Calvin Ridley, the production as well as this offense just does not attract me. He's only had 2 catches in his past 3 games. This is someone that I thought, because of where he was being drafted, would have been a good value. And he saw a good start to the beginning of the year, but he's really trailed off. And he's someone that I would consider cutting, especially in, I would even cut him in 12-team formats just because there are some better options that we have this upcoming week that would be better for your team than unfortunately having Calvin Ridley. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now we are going to get into the meat of the video. This by far is the most important one because we have some very intriguing options for you for week 7 off the waiver wire. The first one is going to come to no surprise. It's going to be Sean Tucker from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, he's coming off a game where he had 14 carries, 136 yards, 56 yards on the air, on 3 targets and 3 receptions. He's only rostered him 0.7% of ESPN leagues, so he's out there for the taking, and he can be, of course, someone that could be a temporary solution. I mean, Rachaad White has not put up these numbers for Tampa Bay, and even if he was to come back, as in Rachaad White, I would still be intrigued to have Sean Tucker on my roster. I mean, of course, there was this talk between Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, but Sean Tucker displaying the athletic ability to go along with how effective he was for this offense. I mean, even if you look at Sean Tucker's traits coming into the league, he had a 4.4 40-yard dash. He had an 86th percentile ranked speed score, and also was in the 95th percentile in the bench press. Tucker showing the rare ability to not only bring you the power, but also combine it with his explosiveness athletically. And for me, Sean Tucker is someone that I would prioritize on waivers, considering that the position right now is pretty meek when it comes to the running back position in fantasy. Someone else I got to mention is going to be Ray Davis. I mean, Ray Davis put up a great performance filling in for James Cook. He truly vacated that James Cook role in this offense, had 20 carries for 97 yards, also had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 55 yards. Didn't score a touchdown, but still gave you a great outing, especially in PPR formats. And with James Cook being out with a toe injury, and with Davis clearly out touching Ty Johnson 23-4, Ray Davis is clearly the running back to own within this offense, especially if James Cook was to miss some time. So definitely keep your eyes out and make a run to get Ray Davis on your roster, because at the very least, he becomes a really good handcuff for James Cook. Another player that I want you to target off waivers is going to be Demario Douglas out of the New England Patriots. Douglas is coming off a great game where he had 6 receptions on 9 targets for 92 yards and a touchdown, and he's only rostered right now in 21% of ESPN rosters. Douglas is now 10th among all wide receivers in route win rate. He's also 6th in win rate versus man coverage, so someone that not only is able to get separation, but has also been getting plenty of targets. And right now he has a very intriguing matchup coming up in week 7 facing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who allow the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers on a points per game basis. Douglas definitely worth targeting this week off waivers, especially if you are struggling with any kind of injuries or of course any bye weeks. Now, I mentioned earlier that you're going to be dropping Dontavian Wicks, and it's because you're going to be picking up his teammate Christian Watson, who's only been rostered in 44.6% of ESPN rosters. Watson came off his best game of the season with 3 receptions on 4 targets for 68 yards and a touchdown, and he's going to be facing a Houston Texans team that is a pretty good defense overall. However, the one area that they've been able to get exposed at is in the deep plays. Currently right now, Houston allows the most 40 plus receiving plays compared to any team in the NFL, being that they have the highest rate in that number. Now granted, Christian Watson is a boomer bust wide receiver, so he in no way is someone that provides a safe floor, but his ceiling alone can make him a very intriguing can start on your fantasy rosters in week number 7. With the news that Gus Edwards was put on the IR, this makes it now very intriguing to now target Kamani Vidal from the Los Angeles Chargers. Vidal only had 4 carries for 11 yards, but what made him impressive was his 2 receptions on 2 targets for 40 yards and a touchdown. Gus Edwards, as I aforementioned, is going to be on IR, and with J.K. Dobbins obviously still getting a lot of the workload there with the Chargers, I think Kamani Vidal is still worth a pickup, especially if anything was to happen to Dobbins. You have yourself someone that could at least provide a safe floor for you with the elite receiving upside that he does provide. And this final player that I want you to add and keep an eye out for is going to be Juju Smith-Schuster. It was easy for me to want to throw him in there because he's still only rostered in 17.8% of ESPN rosters, and coming off a game where he had 7 of 8 receptions for 130 yards, this is someone that I believe that will still get all those looks for Kansas City. Of course, you still have to worry about Xavier Worthy as well as Travis Kelce, but Juju Smith-Schuster already has the familiarity, he already has the rapport there with Patrick Mahomes, and someone that at least provides a pretty good flex opportunity for your fantasy rosters in week number 7. So hey, you made it to the very end of this video. If you found value in it, do me a solid, hit that like button as well as subscribe, and be sure to check out some of these other videos here on the channel that can help you out with your fantasy rosters so that way you can have a successful 2024 season. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. God bless. Peace.